Okay, thanks so much for your patience. We're really excited to have everybody join us today. My name is Amber and I'm the marketing manager here at ShareKnowledge, and this is the webinar Easy Learning Management for SharePoint. So today we have a couple of presenters. The first being Keth Karate. He is the Director of Business Development at ShareKnowledge. We also have Matt Smith from Corvell joining us. He is the Director of Information Services. So a couple of things before we get started and I turn it over to Keth. I wanted to let you know that if you do have any questions, go ahead and write them in the comment box below, and at the end of the presentation we'll try to answer as many as we can. And if for some reason you have to leave early or are not able to stay for the whole time, we're going to go ahead and record this session for you, and so we'll send a follow-up email with the recording of this presentation as well as any unanswered questions that we didn't get to because of time constraints today. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and hand over the presentation to Keth.
Hello. Thank you for joining me. This is Keth Karate, and I'm going to take you through kind of a general overview of running, training, the types of features and functionality that you might be looking for within your SharePoint, as well as some options comparing ShareKnowledge to maybe more traditional, separate, kind of standalone LMS systems, or even some options that you have for maybe customizing your own SharePoint to do some basic training as well. And so there's a lot of different options out there, and we'll go through those. I'm going to first give a quick background on ShareKnowledge, the company. And we have over 20 years experience in e-learning, Microsoft Gold competencies. Our application, ShareKnowledge, LMS for SharePoint, has been available in the market since about 2010, and was originally developed specifically for corporate training, fully integrated into SharePoint. And our very first client that we worked with in the development of the solution is a international or multinational telecom with many, many, many thousands of active users. We kind of started from the ground up. We looked at what was available and what could be done in SharePoint, probably just like many of you are doing today. And we found that there was a lot that SharePoint offered as a fantastic platform. But there was a lot of gaps that a good add-on could potentially fill. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So before we jump into features and functionality and options, we wanted to do a quick poll. What version of SharePoint are you using? And Amber, if you could go ahead and launch that poll, then we'll give it I don't know, maybe 30 seconds for people to respond, and then we'll move on from here. And this will help with a little bit of context for the presentation itself, and we can talk about maybe some differences and options depending on the version of SharePoint that you might be using.
Okay, so it looks like most of you, about 53%, are using 2013. Another 32% are using 2010. And then the remaining, maybe a little bit under 15% using Office 365. And then just a few of you say you don't know. So that's good information for us.
Yeah, perfect. And that actually is really similar to what we see from our client base. The majority of our clients are running SharePoint 2013 today. A lot of them are currently planning on, are they going to stay on SharePoint 2013 for another several years, which is perfectly reasonable. Are they eventually going to move or migrate to SharePoint 2016 on-premise? A lot of our clients tend to be in very high compliance and maybe high security industries. So they often prefer the on-premise solution of SharePoint. But we also have solutions for the cloud, private cloud, Office 365, SharePoint 2010, 2013, 2016, And so really, regardless of where you are or where you're going with your SharePoint, we have solutions for you, as well as you have options for maybe customizing and building out some of your own feature sets depending on the version that you might have. And so very similar to what we see in our current client base. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what is a learning management system. A lot of people might look at SharePoint and say, it is an LMS, and to some degree, it already is. Out of the box, it gives you a web-based interface. You can deliver content to your users. That content could be supporting materials, resources, as well as training. So it meets kind of that lowest bar of a very simple LMS right out of the box. But the truth is, it's more of a content management solution than a true LMS. An LMS will generally have automation and workflows and simplified features for not just managing content, but the delivery of that content, the assignment of that content, reporting on who has and has not, watched a video, taken a quiz or a test or an assessment. Did they get a passing score? But also instructor-led training. Time, date, events, synchronous, live delivered training. Back in the day, that used to be mostly people showing up in a room, a conference room, or a classroom, whatever you want to call it. Today, a big piece of that has been moved to solutions like Skype and WebEx and GoToMeeting. But regardless of the tools and how you're delivering training, whether it's e-learning courses online and content documents or instructor-led training, you need to be able to schedule and assign, maybe calendaring, maybe options for pushing that training to people and telling them they have to do it, maybe by job role or department or division or business unit or hire date, as well as opt-in options where people can search and find the appropriate training to meet their immediate needs and opt in, maybe with an approval process by the training team or the manager, and other other corporate-based workflows. You take all of this together, and now you have a very powerful, functional LMS. So SharePoint can do some of this right out of the box, and you could also maybe start to work, on the IT side to customize some of these feature sets that SharePoint might be lacking right out of the box. So let's take a look at the choices the average organization might have. They can use SharePoint for what it's natively good at, out of the box, content management, maybe collaboration, portals, things like that. And they can go purchase and implement a standalone LMS completely separate from SharePoint. Maybe do some integration as far as single sign-on. But at the end of the day, they're really completely separate systems. Anything done in SharePoint is generally not moving to the LMS unless someone on the training team or the IT team is manually copying information between the systems. You could customize your SharePoint. Like we said, it already meets kind of the low bar as an LMS. So now you can start looking at customizing some features for reporting and assignment and enrollment, and using a lot of the out-of-the-box feature sets that SharePoint offers to get you closer to a complete LMS experience your training team might actually want. And then the last option is looking at something like ShareKnowledge, which is an add-on to SharePoint and provides all of those workflows and features and functionality right within SharePoint, but without that customization. It gets time and expense. So we're going to do another quick poll here, and we had to simplify our feature list quite a bit here, but we wanted to know which of these feature sets the audience here attending today might be interested in adding into their SharePoint, or even if you've already added some of these feature sets in, that would be great to know. So Amber, can you go ahead and launch that poll?
Okay, it's already launched, so if you guys want to go ahead and click on your preferences there, give it a couple seconds. They're pretty spread out evenly. It's quite interesting. So looks like the big one is assigning content and courses to users by job role and department. That's kind of leading the pack at the moment. Followed by automating your onboarding for new hires and reporting.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's probably the top three. Everyone's still voting, but that's the top three that seem to be of most important right now.
Right. So this list we actually gathered from our existing clients. We asked this question as prospective clients and clients come to us. You know, what are you looking for? What do you have today? And what are you looking to do? And you know, why did you contact us? And so this is pretty common feature sets that on the surface you might be able to do in SharePoint, but they start to take a little bit more effort the more complex you get. And there can be a lot of benefit from having solutions that might streamline this process. But a traditional LMS does offer some of this functionality. They do have enrollment engines. They do have the ability to assign by various aspects, like maybe position or job role or other types of groupings of your audiences. So why not just implement a traditional LMS? And I'm sure many of you already have. Many of our customers come to us. They're looking again. It's time to upgrade. It's time to look at maybe doing things differently. And this is what they also come and report to us. They're tired of content duplication between systems. They're using SharePoint as their repository for creating and managing content. It's not uncommon for some of our larger clients to have many hundreds, maybe even thousands of standard operating procedures, resources, and documents in SharePoint, and to systematically move those into an LMS, distribute them in an LMS, report on them in an LMS, and then update them on an ongoing basis becomes extremely time-consuming for the owners of those standard operating procedures, or more frequently, the training team, who's often understaffed and overworked already. You also get into issues with version control. So you updated it in SharePoint, but someone forgot to tell the training team, and now people are accessing the wrong version of the content in the LMS. They're being trained on the wrong training, the wrong standard operating procedures. The content is out of date. You have different workflows between systems. So you're doing all the effort to distribute and publish the content, make it available in SharePoint. And now you have to do something completely different in the LMS, and people get confused, both on the training side as well as your audiences. Your audiences may be accessing some content in SharePoint. You've trained them, you've pushed everyone to SharePoint, you spent a lot of money on this, but now you expect them to go to another interface, another solution, and access very similar, maybe even identical content in another system so that you can get tracking and reporting on it. These are really, really common problems, and they result in multiple points of failure where mistakes can be made, duplication of effort, and at the end of the day, higher cost and maybe higher risk if a training got skipped or content didn't get updated. And so when clients come to us from a traditional LMS, these are some of the problems they're often looking to resolve. And so this brings us to, well, let's just customize our existing LMS, or excuse me, our existing SharePoint, so that it has some of these features and functionality that we might need. As we discussed, SharePoint already has some features that you could use as an LMS. It's very common that organizations are already managing some training content within SharePoint already. And so the real question is, how many of those features and pieces of functionality do you need? Because you might be able to get, you know, the most important 10 or 20% of those features very easily with very low cost by leveraging things like InfoPath and some metadata, some customized scripts and surveys and calendars. As you approach 50% of that functionality or 75% of that functionality, generally speaking, that's when companies come to us, because they realize that the cost of customization is now far greater than just getting an add-on that has this features and functionality already built in. So it really depends on what you need to get by and how much time and energy you have to customize those feature sets. We've actually produced a little bit of content on how you can use standard features and functionality within SharePoint to maybe get to that 20-25% mark as far as LMS functionality. And so I invite you to go to our website, look up some of the content and download it. There's also, I think, a very helpful comparison resource in the handout section. If you were to download the LMS requirements PDF, it's really just a list of features and functionality. And it's often very helpful for the IT team to talk to the training team, use that as a starting point and say, hey, which of these feature sets are a must-have for you? And if there's only 10 or 15 of those feature sets, you might be able to get by without an add-on. If you're getting onto the second page of those feature sets, it might make sense to look at actually adding something into your SharePoint environment. So let's talk a little bit about ShareKnowledge as a solution. The major advantage is it gives you all of those LMS capabilities, but it's completely integrated into your SharePoint and technology ecosystem. Content management, compliance, collaboration, version control, social learning options, including wikis and social sites and team sites, video conferencing integrations for both publishing and assigning instructor-led training, as well as tracking attendance for those conferences. And so we kind of look at the broader picture of all of the functionality that should be tied into a training and learning experience in the corporate world, and try to give you those feature sets that we know the majority of organizations are going to need. So the general benefit at the end of the day is stronger compliance. We've eliminated some of those risky areas of version control and duplication of effort, duplication of routines. We've added automation and the standard corporate workflows. And at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is give you a better solution that lowers your total cost of ownership and saves you time. And so if we look at the cost of the LMS, the ShareKnowledge solution, it's pretty comparative to what's out on the market, but we're leveraging your existing IT infrastructure, we're integrated into your workflows, and we're going to save you time and energy, resulting in up to maybe a 40% lower total cost of ownership. At this point, what we were planning on doing is showing you a little bit of the LMS itself, so you could just get a bit of a sneak peek at what ShareKnowledge looks like and what it does. I'm going to keep this really basic. We're not going to do a full demo, which usually takes somewhere between 45 and 60 minutes. We're just going to highlight some features and functionality, look and feel, and show you how the system is integrated into and actually part of SharePoint. I'm sharing my screen right now. I'm showing the LMS from an end user perspective. My end user is Peter Brady. Peter Brady logs into the network just like he does every day. He's just an employee showing up at work. Part of your SharePoint, part of your network or your portal now is the LMS. And the system can be fully automated, so it knows who Peter is. It can read this information from Active Directory. We're part of your SharePoint, so Peter's just authenticating as he normally does. But we've also tied additional information to Peter. That might come from your HR system. That might come from another system of record, or it might be part of his SharePoint profile or Active Directory. But we generally know all of Peter's job roles, all of his departments, all of his divisions, his hire date, his dates of promotion when he moved from one position to the next. And that is what can automate his entire training plan. His training plan is everything that Peter should do in the order it's due. And you need to forgive Peter. He's significantly overdue on multiple items here. That does happen in the real world from time to time. But ideally, he would be up to date. Those would all be completed. He could be looking at his trainings that are due in the future, and then maybe optional and recommended items down at the bottom of his plan that he decided to opt into. And he can find those optional and recommended trainings through his catalog view. And the catalog view is also completely customized for him. It's everything available as a resource to him. He can search by keyword. He can search by ID or title. He can filter by training type or modality of training. And he can opt in or launch any training that might meet those needs. And the nice thing is this is all out of the box. We have integration tools. We have features and functionality. There's no metadata to make those documents searchable within the LMS or those training. And the system is relatively content agnostic. E-learning courses, quizzes, tests, and multimedia-based trainings show up as the computer-based icon. Tasks, to-do items will show up in the purple. Instructor-led training events, blended learning are green, and documents and PDFs and PowerPoint, all of that can also be published and assigned to users. So it looks like SharePoint because it's part of SharePoint. It's integrated into the experience, and it gives a lot of features and functionality right out of the box. I'm going to switch views, and we're going to instead look at the system from an administrative perspective. So a lot of people understand, okay, it's built Peter a training plan that's been automated. It's made a catalog of available training and content available to Peter. So how is it automated? We have a very powerful enrollment and assignment engine built into the LMS that allows you to group your people dynamically through integration with your HR system or payroll system or even Active Directory or security groups or profile fields. So you can group people by job role and position and departments and divisions, and they can be grouped many different ways and exist in multiple different groups, departments, and divisions with multiple job roles at the same time. And the system will look for any changes made at any time in that system of record that will all flow into the LMS in an automated way, and that is what's automatically building the training plan for each of your users. So if Peter gets promoted to a management position tomorrow, it will update his training plan. It will remove things that he no longer has to do. It will assign new training that he needs to do for his new role in his new position. So this is where we start to save time and energy from both the IT team as well as the training team. So we put a little bit more time into the system up front, setting it up, automating it, making it fully integrated so that the rest of the training management process becomes much easier moving forward. A couple of other pieces to highlight. Content management, collaboration, version control takes place in SharePoint. I know we have some SharePoint experts on the line. You do not have to use folders. This comes up all the time whenever I talk to anyone. You can use one or multiple libraries, but you can actually store content right within SharePoint as you normally do and distribute it and assign it directly from the SharePoint library. So this is a drug and alcohol test assessment on the policies or the standard operating procedures, and I could deliver this training to a group of users right into the LMS, put it into their training plan just by publishing it from here. Pick my audiences, pick my groups, set due dates, make it optional, recommended, or required for different audiences, and I would be done. We also have complete instructor-led training management. And so what that means is anytime the training team wants to assign or offer a new training, I have a number of events already scheduled, but we have drag and drop scheduling. We have the ability to do these as classroom-based trainings or in a specific conference room or by webinar. And if I wanted to create a new training, I can literally just drag and drop it to the date and time that I want. Driver competency audit. It will read my default templates. I can open it for registration, auto approve requests, have waitlisting, do it as a one-day, multiple-day training, assign the people who are teaching that training as instructors for the course, and do it as an on-site, face-to-face based training, or maybe through our integration with Skype, WebEx, GoToMeeting, regional filters. So there's quite a bit of depth into the standard learning management system, including ShareKnowledge, and it's really just a question of figuring out what features and functionality you need, what you have to have, and what you can live without. A couple of other just quick items. This really is built on SharePoint. So if I wanted to, for instance, change the look and feel or edit these pages, change the navigation, that can be done in seconds by anyone with SharePoint administrative rights and control. And so you do have the ability to not just integrate the LMS with external systems and automate it, but actually change the look and feel and how the system navigates and works with the other features and functionality within SharePoint as well. And I think that is going to be the end of the ShareKnowledge demo. Please feel free to chat or text questions to the team. We will be opening it up for some Q&A after the presentation is completed. And so basically the idea is to have a fully integrated LMS, familiar look and feel, a single place to go to access your content, your training, a single place for your training team to manage and distribute training and content, and simplify the IT infrastructure. So some basic values there. At this point, I am going to hand things off to Matthew Smith. He is using ShareKnowledge LMS. He has a really interesting experience. He's looked at running training and managing training in SharePoint from both a customized experience as well as experience using ShareKnowledge itself. So Matt, are you there?
Yes, hi Kath. Thanks for having me today. And thank you for everyone who joined today's call. My name's Matt Smith. I'm with Corvell Corporation, and we are a national workers' comp claims administrator. And so we have about 4,000 employees nationwide who are primarily in roles like claims adjusters, bill review analysts, nurse case managers, and other professional roles like that. We have a training team that I lead in Portland, Oregon that consists of myself and 2 other individuals. So we're a pretty lean training team for a company of our size, and we adopted SharePoint pretty early on. We've been on SharePoint since version 2003, and as a technical communicator and trainer, I recognize the value in SharePoint pretty early on in terms of giving us access to enterprise search and document libraries, especially version control, the lists functionality, and gave us the ability to develop quick tips, FAQs, and calendars. And then subsequent versions gave us the ability to track information and surface information through metadata. So we were using SharePoint pretty extensively and positioning it as our corporate intranet and kind of the go-to place in our organization to access high-value corporate information. So HR and benefits, sales and marketing, all of our training materials were all being published and in SharePoint, and we were taking a lot of opportunities to train people in SharePoint and how to access information there. We wanted to provide some product trainings for our sales force, and so we started experimenting with using SharePoint as an e-learning program. We already had some experience using Captivate, so we were publishing materials into a SharePoint document library and using InfoPath as a way to develop quizzes to to have assessments on our trainings, and we developed some reporting and SQL reporting services. So we had kind of a homegrown training platform, or LMS, if you will, that was kind of stitched together using out-of-the-box features in SharePoint and Microsoft Office. And that worked okay, but as we started to receive more requirements, we realized that we weren't going to be able to rely purely on SharePoint, and that we were going to need to look into a third-party LMS. And so our starting point was to look for vendors that were producing a learning management system in the SharePoint space, because we already had the expertise in SharePoint, we already had the infrastructure dedicated to SharePoint, so why not start there? And then the second primary requirement we had was the ability to integrate with web conferencing software like WebEx and now Skype for Business, but then Live Meeting and Link. So those were two of the primary things we were looking for in a vendor. So ShareKnowledge kind of quickly rose to the top. And some other things that we're able to get out of a learning management system that would be very complex to try and get through a customized homegrown solution in SharePoint include some things that Kath has already described, like the ability to publish content that's as SCORM, which is a standard developed by the Department of Defense, so it's kind of an agnostic standard for e-learning courses. And one of many things a SCORM file allows you to do is to track the completion of a course with a little more granularity than did you just pass a quiz or not. For example, you can tell if somebody has completed, say, 75% of a course by, say, the number of slide views or the amount of time that they've spent in the course. So SCORM allows you to do some things like that. The ability to categorize courses, to assign courses by role, to make courses required, to assign courses as prerequisites. We needed to some depth level in reporting, so and not merely seeing everyone who's completed a course, but be able to traverse your organizational hierarchy to see who has finished a course by your direct reports, and then that report's direct reports, and so on. We also learned that it was important for our managers to be able to specifically assign courses. They wanted to be able to have that control and assign courses to their own subordinates. And then finally, the ability to assign CEUs, or continuing education credits. We do have people that are in professional roles. They're able to garner CEUs for participating in certain trainings. So the ability to track attendance and then assign CEUs to our professional staff turned out to be very important for us. And those are all the things that we were able to achieve by going with a third-party LMS. And so by going with an LMS like ShareKnowledge that integrated right into SharePoint, we didn't make any additional investments in staff or in infrastructure. So we already had an individual who is our SharePoint administrator who was able to install ShareKnowledge for us and set us up with the site collection that we needed. Our training staff and our employees are already highly familiar with SharePoint, so the learning curve to get people up on ShareKnowledge was pretty seamless. In fact, we didn't even really identify ShareKnowledge as anything special. We just kind of rolled it out, and people were started accessing courses from the training site in SharePoint that they were already familiar with. So that's a little bit of our our experience in a nutshell, and I'll hand it off to Kath unless any questions have come in.
And it does. Thanks a lot, Matt. And it looks like maybe there can be some questions here that maybe you can also help answer. I'm going to go through a list of some of the questions that have come in. And just try to give the best answers we can here as we go through. So one question. We have two environments. We have SharePoint 2007 and SharePoint 2013. Can SharePoint work in both? We actually do have a solution that works with SharePoint 2007. We can actually also set this up as a hybrid type model, where we might deploy in the SharePoint 2013 environment, but it can actually be integrated into SharePoint 2007 for a relatively seamless experience. And that's one of those questions that's a little bit unique. I would recommend you give us a call or email us, let's talk. But we absolutely have done this before, and we can actually run in one environment but make it look like it's part of the other environment. Another question that came in, do you have any deployments of 25,000 users or more? Actually, our very first client, this is back in pre-2010 when we first built the solution, it was over 25,000 users. I believe today they run between 35 and 40,000 active users. Our largest account has around 105,000 active users, and we have a relatively good number of clients that are, I would say, are between 15,000 and 50,000 users. I also want to say that that's a small piece of our client base. Our clients tend to start at around 100 active users. That's around the time and point where you kind of need an LMS. You start to say, I can't do this on Excel anymore. I need better audit control. I need better tracking. I need better reporting and some automation. And so they start around 100 users. We start to be a really strong fit, maybe around 250 users. And I would say the vast majority of our clients, 80% of our clients are somewhere between 250 users and probably 5,000 users. But we are extremely scalable. This also fits into another question that came up, and there are some relatively simple applications that deploy into SharePoint and various web parts you can purchase, and even other solutions that will deploy into SharePoint and give you training and some compliance functionality. And we were asked how we compare to these other solutions. Number one is, I think, scalability. Our solution is object-oriented. All of the data that is captured from quizzing, testing, assignments, completion, it all is stored in a dedicated SQL database, not just SharePoint lists. And that's really important. If you're 100 people, if you're 150 people, maybe not critical factor, because you're not going to hit the scalability limits of SharePoint lists or anything like that. But as you grow, having that data in a database is extremely important. If you look at, let's say, a 50-question quiz, and you have 1,000 people, and you have 5 of those types of assessments, and the average person takes each one twice a year. You have people that are coming and going and leaving the organization. Our database even allows question-level detail analysis in a SCORM format. So not only can you track who has passed the exam and the test, but you can also track even down to the question-level detail of which questions which person got right on what attempt. And that requires a very scalable architecture of the LMS, and I think it's one of the major advantages of our solution. Another major advantage is the idea that we were not built for kind of this academic LMS that a lot of solutions that originally hit the market were. Some of the first LMS systems were built for colleges and universities and schools, and those have been on the market for 20 years. We were built for corporate workflows, this idea of automation by job role and department and divisions, and large scalable hierarchical organizations with the ability to fine-tune permissions, not just audiences of what they receive, but the management of those groups through management permissions and hierarchical training administrative permissions, meaning you can have a global training administrator in our system who manages training and compliance globally. But if you have people in Seattle and people on the East Coast and they run independently, you can also have separate training managers who cannot interfere with each other within the LMS, but you keep that centralized control and reporting if you want it. And you can go granular all the way down to specific teams so that a team can add training just for their team and just for their audience, but they're still inheriting training from the top down as well. Interesting questions, and we can certainly, if you want to get in touch with our team, maybe talk more about some of those differences from an architectural standpoint. Questions about trial versions for the on-premise version. That's definitely one where I'd say call our team. We're a pretty enterprise solution. Give our team a call. Let's first make sure you like the solution. It's a good fit for you, features, functionality, price-wise, and then we'll work with you to make sure that you can actually experience the solution and you're not going to have any problems deploying it or installing it. Do you have German language UI? We do. We actually are localized into multiple languages. German and Dutch are two of them. French, Canadian, English, a couple of others as well. So we do have a German language UI version of the LMS. And technically we can support, with some effort, any Microsoft language pack. So if the languages we don't, we have today don't meet all of your requirements, for a little time and cost, we can actually localize into probably 70, 75 different Microsoft supported languages. Okay, let's take a look. Any other questions that are coming in? That looks like the majority of those. A question about SCORM format and quizzing and testing. I think Matt talked a little bit about this. SCORM, or it's basically an e-learning format. It's built for LMS systems. Our system is content agnostic. You don't have to use SCORM format. You can use a PDF. You can distribute a PDF, track who's read it. You could ask for an electronic signature or a compliance agreement. I've read and understand the standard operating procedure. I'll follow the rules. But when you get into quizzing and testing and more multimedia-based training, SCORM is the format that allows progress tracking, detailed question-level reporting, the ability to set grading standards. You need 80% on this quiz to pass or 90% on that quiz to pass. Our system has a built-in authoring tool for quizzes, tests, and assessments. We also supply a PowerPoint plugin that allows you to convert standard PowerPoint slide decks into e-learning courses as well. But you do not have to use our authoring tools. You can use off-the-shelf authoring tools, things like Adobe. There's dozens of tools. Some of them are free out there. But anything that can produce either kind of a standard Office or PDF document or convert to SCORM, you can basically use that content in the LMS. Any other questions from anyone?
To the person who asked about versioning, I can add a little bit to that. We at Corvell, we set up a separate farm for ShareKnowledge. We did that a little bit out of cautiousness when we were first embarking on it. We thought, let's keep ShareKnowledge, since you have to, it's software that you need to install into a SharePoint site collection. Let's keep it separate from our intranet portal. And the main reason we did that was because we wanted to have the flexibility to change SharePoint versions out of step with ShareKnowledge. We've had experiences in the past where vendors are not ready, and we didn't want to get held up. So in anything, ShareKnowledge has been ready before us. In fact, ShareKnowledge was one of the very first site collections that we upgraded from SharePoint 2010 to 2013, and now we're 90% on SharePoint 2013. So that's just a little bit more background or detail around the versioning question.
Thanks, Matt, for that. I do see a few other questions came in while I was talking. Reminders, notifications, absolutely. So if you publish training in our system to a group of users, You can determine how and when notifications go out. For instance, you might want anyone who has a new required assignment to get notified about those required assignments. You may or may not notify them about recommended or optional training. We have manager notifications. We have escalating notifications based on due dates and reminders for events, and they're fully customizable. When you deploy, we help you turn on, turn off the notifications you want, customize them in the wording and the schedule that you want to have. So all of that is built in. A couple of questions came in regarding a license model. And so regardless of how we deploy, whether it's on the cloud or on-premise, hybrid, we really use a standardized licensing model, and it's usually a subscription-based licensing model, similar to what you would see in a SaaS solution. And it's based on the total number of active users you want in the LMS. And we did this on purpose. We work with some very large organizations, government agencies and states and enterprise organizations. Some of them roll out the LMS enterprise-wide. Some of them roll it out for just a handful of teams or departments or divisions. And so this allows you to have a very large, scalable, maybe global SharePoint environment, but use the LMS for the audience that you want it for. And that can be a global audience. It could be everyone, which is what most of our clients do. But we work with some Fortune 100 companies. And because of the hierarchical nature of our LMS, they've actually deployed our LMS even though that they had another LMS running. But they don't use it globally. They might use it just for a division or a team of users. And you know, a small team in a Fortune 100 company could be 1,000 users or 5,000 users, could be 100 users. And so we will price it based on the total number of users, active users you have in the system. And if you have any questions about what that pricing would look like, get in touch with our team. We do tiers, discount tiers, which kind of map to the standard kind of SaaS pricing. And so as your number of users goes up or doubles, generally the price might go up between 30 and 50%. So the larger your user count, the lower your cost per user. A couple other questions about the UI and language and localization. Absolutely, the system can be set so that if you have multiple different users in different languages, as long as we're localized into that language, your English speakers will see the interface in English, your German speakers will see the interface in German, your Dutch learners or French learners will see it in Dutch or French. Are there multiple levels of administration so different departments can manage their own courses and content? I touched on this a little bit. And absolutely, this is a major strength of our system, and this gets back to this idea of a corporate-based LMS. This is really important. You can have a global LMS administrator. I'm actually going to share my screen again, and we're going to look at this from an administrative perspective. You can have a global training manager or managers that manage training in the entire LMS all the way down. These do not have to be SharePoint administrators. This is just control of training and content and assignments. It's really managing it from a training perspective. SharePoint administration and SharePoint control is separate. We don't expect your training team to be experts in SharePoint. What they can do is they can assign and manage training to all groups, all departments, all divisions, all job roles. But if you wanted to say sales needs their own training administrator, you could do that. And the sales team would still inherit training from parent organizational units and higher level training managers, but that sales team could have their own training manager who's in touch with their needs and is assigning and managing training just for them. We also have manager permissions and manager controls so that managers can search the catalog for helpful content and assign or make that training available to people on their team of employees. based on management hierarchy. Another way that you could maybe manage or adjust training management permissions might be based on region. And so it's very possible that you have a different training manager based on the location or languages that your audiences speak. So you can customize this. It will work according to what your organizational structure is and the type of permissions that you need in the LMS to make it work for you. Different modalities offer the ability to build content within ShareKnowledge. So let's talk about this. So any kind of standard Office document, video is supported. Tasks, which might not be content related at all. A task might actually be something like, I want you to take an action, maybe outside the LMS. It could be content specific, but it might not be. E-learning content can look lots of different ways. Really, e-learning is a format. It's a mode of delivery which is browser-based, but it could be multimedia and video streaming. It could just be a standalone quiz. It could be a combination of that. It could have document information. So generally speaking, the system is very flexible with the types and modalities of content, anywhere from just a document that you want people to download or view, agree to terms and conditions, give an electronic signature on, add comments, surveys, through instructor-led training and blended learning, all the way into e-learning quizzes and assessments and multimedia-based options. You can also embed content into the system, stream it from other systems like YouTube. This is from a Canadian government website built for training, and instead of sending people to the website, I embedded the video right into the LMS, assigned it as a task. So lots of different content options, and the ability to use pretty much any content authoring software you want. Our authoring tools that we give you as part of the LMS are SCORM-based authoring tools. So when they produce content, it will show up as an e-learning training activity which will play through the browser. I think I got a warning that we're down to just a couple of minutes. Any other questions that we need to answer before we drop off? One thing that came up, if you want to, please be aware that there are handouts that you can download through GoToMeeting. We will be recording and we will probably publish the video of this presentation if you want to share it with people from your company. Please give us a couple of days to make that available. And if anyone is interested in scheduling kind of a live online personalized demonstration and Q&A to see if our solution might be a good fit, or even talk to us about maybe customizing your SharePoint features and functionality that you might have if you don't think you need the full functionality of ShareKnowledge, give us a call or email us. We'd be happy to help you out. I think, Amber, I'm going to hand things back to you.
Okay, thanks, Kath. All right, well, it looks like we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I have taken notes on everyone's questions, so it looks like right now we've covered almost all of them, so, or if not all of them. So we will go ahead and send you a follow-up email. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day, and I guess we'll say goodbye at this point. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.